We are peace seekers. We have restrained ourselves for a long time, but now is the time to do what needs to be done.
That was Israeli Defense Minister Ehud Barak explaining Israel's decision to launch a ground assault into Gaza. And we're back now with Britt, Mara, Bill, and Juan. So, Mara, are you surprised that Israel finally, after several days of an air bombardment, decided to actually launch a ground invasion? And what are the risks and rewards here for both Israel and Hamas?
Well, I'm not surprised because they can't just do it from the air, as they learned in Lebanon. They say they've learned a lot of lessons from that catastrophe and are going to do it right this time. I think that the only good thing for President-elect Obama is that it's happening now instead of after January 20th. I think the bad thing for him is that he had promised a very aggressive early push, diplomatic push on the Middle East peace process, and he was going to use his kind of international honeymoon to see if he could get something done there. I think this makes it a lot harder unless somehow this Israeli offensive can delegitimize Hamas, which seems like a long shot. I mean, it certainly didn't work with Hezbollah in Lebanon. They actually ended up looking stronger. But if it can do that, then I think the new Obama administration would have an opening.
Bill, I want to pick up on the comparison to Lebanon, because as we saw with the Israeli invasion of southern Lebanon taking on Hezbollah 2 years ago, once you get in, it's hard to get out, and it's very hard to get out on your own terms. How does Israel ensure that it so degrades Hamas that they can stop the firing of those short-range missiles from Gaza into the neighboring Israeli villages?
Obviously, nothing is sure in war, but first of all, they hasn't been firing across the border from Lebanon in the last 2 years. So even though that operation was messed up in many ways and maybe strategically didn't accomplish its objectives in that narrow sense, it has been safe in northern Israel for the last 2 years. If they could accomplish that for southern Israel and stop the rocket firing, I think that would be a pretty real achievement. Ehud Barak was not defense minister. He was a critic of the way when Lebanon happened. He was a critic of the way it occurred. He's a serious military man. He presumably has studied the lessons of Lebanon. And I think the Israelis have a theory about how they can go in, take out some of the leaders of Hamas, and especially destroy the tunnels which have been used to smuggle in, especially these more advanced rockets from Iran, and really make it much harder for even if Hamas remains in control of Gaza, it'll be a more tenuous control. Israel will have the ability to continue bombing and to go back in, and they may be able to pretty well suppress the ability to fire these longer-range rockets into southern Israel. And above all, they can defeat Hamas. I mean, I think if you care about the peace process, you should want Israel to embarrass and humiliate Hamas. That's the only chance. There would be no peace process if Hamas were governing Gaza. I mean, that would be the worst thing for Obama. This is a favor for Obama if it delegitimizes and weakens Hamas.
But of course, that's always the problem, Juan, is how do you delegitimize? I mean, some people would say that Israel ended up beating Hezbollah, and yet the Hezbollah leaders, Nasrallah, ended up appearing to be heroes because they had survived the Israeli attack. I mean, Hamas could be empowered by all this.
I think that's my fear, that by making them your enemy and legitimizing them as a real combatant, you, in essence, raise them up. The challenge here, it seems to me, as we look forward, towards next week and beyond, Ehud Barak said, this is not going to be short, and it's not going to be easy. So what does he mean? It seems to me they're aiming, therefore, at Israel having to occupy Gaza.
Well, they explicitly say they're not going to.
They say they're not, but how else are you going to, in fact, stop these folks from firing these rockets? Now, these rockets come periodically. I think it's disproportionate to say you have 440 Palestinians dead, you have 4 Israelis dead, but I understand the sense of weakness and vulnerability that the Israelis feel that their neighbors are firing these rockets. So they go in there, okay. And I agree with Bill. If we could get Hamas out of the picture, that would be better. If you really want peace, you cannot have people who do not acknowledge the legitimacy of Israel. But at the same time, then, to go in there, it seems to me you have to have a plan to get out, and I don't see that they have a plan to get out, and that's why I'm talking about the possible necessity for Israel to stay there for years to come, and I think that just makes the situation all the more volatile.